We started on our journey together with a paranormal investigation at Eloise Asylum.
We left the asylum eager to learn the truth.
We bought our own equipment and decided to document our findings.
And we're here to share them with you.
I'm Melissa.
I'm Mandi. Welcome to our paranormal experience.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Melissa.
I'm Mandi.
And today we're here to talk about the curse of Lake Lanier. Lake Lanier, located in Georgia, is a huge lake. It contains 625 billion gallons of water and is 200 feet at its deepest.
10 million people visit the lake annually for boating, fishing, resorts.
There's a few water parks, I think, on the lake, marinas. I mean, it's huge.
Yep, swimming.
And a lot of those people visit the lake, have a great time, and go home to their families. But then there are those that don't. In 2022, 6 people drowned in Lake Lanier.
As of September 2023, 39 people drowned in Lake Lanier.
That's a really big number for one summer. And not even the whole summer. That's what, June, July, August, September. There could still be people in Georgia swimming in late September, early October.
Right.
Lake Lanier first opened in 1956. Since then, people believe that over 700 people have died. The reason I say believe is because it's easy to say if a person drowned in the lake, they died at the lake. But there's a lot of ways that people have passed away at this lake that are not drownings. Drownings are the most common. So some of it can be subjective. A lot of people believe that the reason for the deaths at Lake Lanier is its haunted history. Lake Lanier is in Forsyth County, which was inhabited by members of the Cherokee Nation long, long ago. But along the way, someone found gold, and that led to the white man invading the land and forcing the Cherokee off of it. This was part of the Trail of Tears and was ugly forced removal, and it's probably safe to assume led to many deaths. Eventually, Oscarville in Forsyth County became a thriving Black community, and it remained this way until 1912. There were 2 instances in 1912 that would change the county. Now, one thing that I'm going to say, and I feel like every historical episode I've ever podcasted about has this issue where it's like a game of telephone. You know, there's a bit of truth in every old story that we read, and maybe a lot of truth. But we see different things from different sources, and I just have to pick the one that I think fits most with what was happening, and the one that I think has the most truth in it. And I could be wrong,
Right.
I'm not perfect. I'm not a historian. The first incident was on September 5th when Ellen Grice claimed that a Black man entered her bedroom. She claimed she woke up and screamed, and he fled. Now, in certain accounts of this story, it seems to me that her mother walked in, she screamed, he fled. There's just a few different ways that this has been told. The summary of the story is that there was a Black man in her bedroom, and he fled. Sheriff William Reed detained Tony Howell along with Johnny Bates, Fate Chesser, Isaiah Perkle, and Joe Rogers. They placed all 5 Black men in jail. Because there are different versions of what happened in this story, there's different things that people believe. I mean, maybe there was a Black man in her room that didn't belong there. Maybe she screamed and he did flee.
My first thought was that her mother came in the room, that maybe she was dating the Black man.
Right,
secretly.
and got caught because that was not acceptable in those times. Maybe she did have a night visitor and she was caught. And she had to make up a story because as unacceptable as it was for him, it was also unacceptable for her in society's eyes. It's really unfortunate that people couldn't share their love in those days and they had to hide it. And this situation definitely caused some racial tension in the area. And a few days later, someone alleged that a black preacher, Grant Smith, said something along the lines of, "Sorry, white woman." Like maybe he was calling Ellen a sorry white woman. That caused an uproar. White people ganged up and horsewhipped the preacher. They had to station the preacher at a courthouse with guards to protect him and transfer him out of the town. Was anyone arrested for it?
Probably not.
Nope.
The second instance occurred a few days later when May Crow, a white 18-year-old girl, was walking to her aunt's house when she went missing. A search was launched, which led to her being found the next day in a pool of her own blood with her throat slashed. She was alive, but unfortunately she did pass later from her injuries. A small pocket mirror was found at the scene, and people believe that it belonged to Ernest Knox, a 16-year-old black boy.
Now, this is like before DNA. Like, they really have no proof, right, that this belonged to Ernest. I mean, was there anything?
No, but he was arrested at his home and subjected to a mock lynching, which led to a confession.
I would confess if somebody threatened to lynch me.
Right, exactly. Plus, I feel like, why would a teenage boy have a mirror? Not to say they couldn't,
I mean,
but
maybe they did in those days. I mean, I feel like mirrors were probably less available. But still, even if he did have a mirror, like, did other people in the town, like, didn't they all shop at the same general store?
right.
Like, nobody else had that mirror.
It could be anybody's mirror.
Like, I don't know. I feel like that's just not... I feel like that's not a piece of evidence you lynch somebody on. But I guess it's not, right? Like, they got a confession. They got a confession, so they were lynching him on the confession. I mean, it was a witch hunt, right? He was a black man. They found his mirror.
Yeah, they're just looking to blame it on somebody. They don't care.
Right, so they don't have to work anymore.
They don't care. He was said to have hit May from behind, drug her into the woods, and raped her. It was then said that he returned to the scene with 3 acquaintances: Oscar Daniel, 17, his sister Tracy Jane Daniel, 22, and her live-in boyfriend Rob Edwards, 24. It was said they satisfied their lustful passions on the girl.
So he went back, got his friends, and they returned to the scene and raped her more, including his sister.
Right, which... Not saying that a girl can't do bad things, but that's kind of really...
Like, what fun was in that for her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like she would not be there or would... I don't know. She wouldn't watch.
Like,
wouldn't think... Like, there's just so much of that doesn't make any sense.
It has happened in history. I mean, women have... But usually not with their brothers and their... Like what was in it for her?
It's
I don't
far-fetched.
know. It's very weird. Yeah, it's very far-fetched.
The men were arrested, and Rob Edwards didn't even make it to his trial. A lynch mob drug him from his jail cell and hung him from a pole in the town square. But his body was so mangled, they weren't even sure if he had been shot first. Wow.
Isn't that insane? Like, the evil in people. They don't even know. They don't even know that this person participated in this in any way. They're threatening to lynch people to get confessions, and then they're torturing them.
I mean, and if they don't know if he had been shot, that tells you, like, how mangled his body was. Like,
yeah.
They could not determine where there was a bullet hole.
Right.
It's disgusting and sad. At trial, Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel were convicted of murder in a 1-hour trial with an all-white jury of farmers and 1 night watchman. They were sentenced to hang the following day.
Can you imagine if you committed a crime and the jury that was convicting you was all white male farmers?
No.
Like that, it seems so unfair, and it was unfair.
Right. I mean, because...
Nothing against white male farmers, but...
Well, there needs to be some diversity. Right. Because, when I had to go to jury duty last year, I feel like they were, both sides that were picking the jury were really trying hard for that. It seemed
It's
like
because
it makes it fair.
Yeah.
So
if only mistrials would have been a thing.
Right. So public hanging was not legal, but they fenced in an area.
Oh, so that it wasn't public?
Yes.
Oh, because of a fence. Okay.
Right. So that's, I'm doing air quotes, hiding it, right? So it's not public. They burned the fence the night before, and 5,000 to 8,000 people attended, which was more than the total county population of 12,000.
Wow.
Just think about that.
Well, I mean, this is like, it's like mob mentality, right? They want to see this person die. What they're doing is more awful than what was done to Maycrow.
Yes, yes. But, like, what's kind of getting me is they built this fence, which had to have taken time, resources, you know, and then they burnt it. That's a lot of effort to be that mean. Some people even took souvenirs.
From the hanging?
Yeah.
I've heard of people doing that with different executions. It's disgusting.
What are you going to do with that?
Right. What are you going to display it in your house? Ugh. Now, at this point, it's basically a war. The white people have it out for the black people. The black people are defending themselves and, I mean, clearly are very angry at the white people. I mean, it's an all-out war. Rumors are flying. People are saying that the black men were threatening to dynamite the town. Just chaos is ensuing. And the white men formed a group, the Night Riders. This group threatened, murdered, and I'm sure worse as well, the black people of the town. All they had to do was leave a bundle of sticks. Like, this is like after some time of them like rampaging through the town. Mm-hmm. All they had to do was leave a bundle of sticks at the door of a black family, and that family would be gone by morning.
So that was their,
I guess, some sort of sign, like a warning, like you have one chance to go. After 4 months' time, the Night Riders had ran 98% of the black population out of the town. And I would say that 2% that was still standing were probably the most stubborn son of a bitches you've ever met, right? Like, they're standing on their principles. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Sometimes your life and your happiness and your peace is just more important. But, I mean, these people had property. They had land, and it went generations back, and they were just ran out. In 1987, Oprah Winfrey visited the town, and it was, you know what, I can't remember, and I actually didn't write this down. It was something like almost 40 years since there had been a black resident in the town.
Oh, wow.
So they literally ran them out for that long. Isn't it amazing that all these horrific things that happened all started with one story about a black man in a white woman's bedroom?
Yeah.
Like, what came from that was just insane. It blows my mind.
It almost seems like they were just looking for
for a reason.
That one little thing to start
a war.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say town, I think we're actually talking about the county.
Yeah.
Forsyth County, because Oscarville itself was destroyed. Well, maybe not destroyed. Changed?
Right.
We're going to skip forward to the 1950s. So far, just to recap, the Cherokee have been run off the land. The black population was run off the land. And now the remaining white population will now be run out of town by the government.
It's almost like karma.
It was decided that a dam was needed for flood control, water supply, hydroelectric power, and the government bought families out of their land. You know, that land that wasn't originally theirs anyway. You know, some people might have been happy that they were being bought out of their land. Others, they were not happy to be bought out of their land.
Right.
But it happened, and 6 years later, the Buford Dam was completed. Lake Lanier is the reservoir that is connected to the dam. The government relocated the people off of 56,000 acres to build it. Everyone has a different story, but it's said that anywhere between 250 and 700 families were relocated for this project. So they relocated the families, but what about everything else on the land? I mean, it's being turned into a lake, right? There were cemeteries. On these 56,000 acres, there were 20 cemeteries. So the government said, actually, this is the Army Corps of Engineers,
okay,
that they moved the cemeteries. There's trees, barns, houses. There's lots of things on 56,000 acres of land.
So do you think they really moved all the bodies?
I don't think that they could have gotten all of the graves. People suspect they didn't get all of the graves. It seems like what a hard task to move all those graves to flood the land.
And do you need to get permission from their family to move them?
I didn't see anything about that. I'm not really sure. But what about the Cherokee that lived there before? Their graves weren't marked.
Right.
So this brings us to the debate that we had one night on the phone. And I think, do you move the bodies? Like, I feel like it's just better to flood the land with the graves there. But you feel differently.
I do feel differently. But I do think it's a great area. Like, for one, I think graves shouldn't be disturbed. So I do agree with you.
Yeah, see, that's my thing. I think underwater or not. I mean, I don't think it's good to flood the land. Underwater or not, I think it's worse for it to be disturbed.
But then I also think about, I don't know, just being under all that water. Is the water going to get down into the grave somehow?
Oh, I'm sure.
Is it going to flood it, right? That's disrespectful. Would it be better to move the grave to dry land? And then, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the people that were buried there no longer have family that comes and visits them. But what if there are some people that still do want to visit graves? They wouldn't be able to visit those graves if they were under the water.
Yeah, and I feel like the first time we spoke about this, you were really stuck on the respect issue.
Yeah.
It was so disrespectful to you to fill it with water. And I don't disagree that it's disrespectful to fill it with water.
Both ways are disrespectful.
Yeah. Yes, both ways are disrespectful. And I guess it's just subjective, which is better and which is worse. So they relocated, supposedly, all of the marked graves. The structures considered dangerous, such as tall stuff, wooden structures, huge barns or whatever. And I think that they just burned those.
Okay.
And the reason that they burned the wooden structures is because that they felt that they were a floating concern. So structures that weren't a floating concern over a certain height were just left. And then what they did was they filled, I'm not exactly sure how they filled it, a million hoses. I don't really know. Let the rain maybe fill it. But they filled it or let it fill to what's known as below pool. Have you?
Below pool?
Yeah, as opposed to full pool. I've never heard these terms before.
I've never heard them either. That's why I
feel like maybe a lot of people have, but I haven't. So I guess that's far below its standard amount that it should be full for operation, whatnot. And then they literally had people go around in boats and cut the tops off of trees.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that, I don't know how. I would love to see video of how this happened. How do you do that? I don't know.
So they filled it not as full as it should be. However, they filled it. And then they went around in boats, so the treetops were sticking up, and then they cut that part off?
Right.
Wow.
So that when it filled up the rest of the way. But some of these stumps are 70 feet tall.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts? So the tree trunks are still standing, along with house foundations. There's cars underneath of there. A literal racetrack Like the stands are still underneath there, like an entire racetrack. And there's even bridges underwater.
That is so crazy.
And if you look at pictures of this lake, I mean, I know I've said how many gallons of water are in there, you know, how far the shoreline goes, things like that. But when you see a picture of it, it is very large. It's 26 miles long, 700 miles of shoreline, 625 billion gallons of water, 200 feet deep in the deepest area. It is not a circle, which maybe I'm ignorant. I would have expected. Because when I hear like a man-made lake, which I know they just flooded a section of land and you can't really control. I don't know. When I imagine a man-made lake, I imagine it being uniform.
Yes.
You know, maybe not exactly, but more uniform. And
what
this
I've
is
seen.
There's areas that just branch out. I mean, there's from one angle, it looks like a person running, like with their arms and legs out. Like there's just so many like areas that go off. It is a huge, very twisty and turny lake. One of the most oddly shaped lakes I think I've ever seen an aerial view of. Not that I've seen that many, but my mom actually lives by a variety of lakes, and I have looked at the aerial views of those lakes multiple times. So, you know, just like kind of mapping like where we're going to kayak and things like that.
Right. I think some of the aerial view, if you're just looking at one section, I would almost like think that maybe it was a really wide river. In certain parts.
That had different pieces that branched off.
Yes.
And they go really wide river.
Right,
yes.
right.
But and those pieces that branch off that look like arms and legs. And
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is really, really large. But as large as it is, almost 700 people are said to have drowned there since it opened. 200 since like 1994. And other lakes of the same size, or with like the same amount of like visitors yearly, things like that, generally have about 1/3 of the deaths of this particular lake. So it is large. It has a lot of people. There's a lot of stuff to do there. But when you compare it to other lakes with these same types of situations, this lake has far more deaths.
So I'm guessing this is where people start wondering if there's paranormal.
Yes, paranormal activity, a curse. I mean, have we learned nothing from Poltergeist?
I was thinking that when you were talking about moving the graves.
Yes. When I was reading the story, I'm thinking, man, this is like a lot of movies came from stories just like this. Because this is some scary stuff. I mean, they're moving graves. They're ruining people's homes and lives. And
there's a lot of
reason for a curse.
Yeah. I mean, just like there's a lot of tragedy, a lot of anger, you know, violence, sadness, death, racism, like all of these bad things.
If you had a cauldron and you were putting in ingredients for a curse, all of those would be there.
Yeah.
Hate.
Yeah.
Death. Violent death. All of it's there. Just got to mix it together and get Lake Lanier. So let's talk about some of the situations that have happened at Lake Lanier.
One of the most popular legends surrounding Lake Lanier is the Lady of the Lake. In 1958, two women named Delia Mae Parker Young and Susie Roberts went to a dance in town, and they left early, and on the way home they stopped to get gas. It said that they left without paying for it. After they left, they were driving across the bridge over Lake Lanier when they lost control of the car and went off the bridge and landed into the water. My thought would be, like, maybe they were fleeing. Like, if they really
did a gas station attendant chase them?
I don't know, but, like, it would make sense, right? Like,
I feel like, especially, like, back in the day, it was a lot more common for somebody to jump in a car and chase you because assault was different than it is now.
Right. Because otherwise, I mean, why would you be driving that fast on a bridge?
Yeah, I mean, it's either just a very coincidental set of weird things happening, or, yeah, maybe the gas station attendant was chasing them. And how do they know that they drove off the bridge?
It's because there were tire tracks. It wasn't until a year later that a fisherman was out on the lake, and he came across a decomposed body floating near the bridge where they drove off. And at that time, no one could identify who it belonged to.
So they knew that they drove off the bridge because of the tire tracks, but they didn't find their bodies or their car for at least a year. They found one body. But the reports of the Lady of the Lake had started almost immediately after the accident, after the women went missing.
People have reported seeing a woman with a blue dress and no hands. Also, mysterious arms supposedly reach out to swimmers from the bottom of the lake as they're swimming by.
Do the arms have hands?
I don't know.
The report isn't clear about that.
It's not clear. I feel like if it was her, if that was her ghost, it wouldn't have hands, but
I do see in a lot of the Lake Lanier stories, the Lady of the Lake is there or responsible. And considering she was wearing the blue dress, and when the body was recovered a year later, it was wearing the blue dress that Dahlia was wearing. But at that time, they couldn't identify the body. They didn't put it together. I think that they suspected it was Dahlia because of the blue dress. But, things were different then. They didn't have testing like they do now. And she had been in the lake for a year, so...
And if she truly had no hands... I don't know if they did fingerprints back then, but...
Right.
They probably wouldn't have even been viable anyway. The water, but...
And I know that I read something about that, and I didn't note it. I think she didn't have hands. And I think that was supposed to be, like, the big thing, is that people had been reporting this apparition with no hands for this entire year, and then they found her, and she didn't have hands. But it does make sense that she would be missing pieces of her limbs because she had been in the lake for a year.
Right.
There's fish in there.
Right.
So many fish in there. And people were catching the fish in there and they were eating them.
Oh, God.
And the fish had been eating her. And that's so morbid to think about. And that's what I thought about when I read this story, is I do wonder... they always say if you swim in a lake, there's a dead body to water ratio that you find acceptable. Right? Because there's dead bodies. I mean, there's at least dead fish, right, in lakes. So, I don't know. I mean, have I ever eaten a fish that has eaten part of a dead body? I do wonder.
I'm going to say you probably have.
I think the chances are good because I actually do like fish. I've eaten a lot of fish.
I am going to tell you that I have not, because I do not like fish.
Yep.
I also do not like going in a lake and having any type of plant or gross slimy stuff touch me.
Yeah, me and Mandi are very opposite in that way.
Yeah.
I am in the lake. My feet are in the seaweed.
I can't stand it. It grosses me out.
Pulling
so
my children in. Pulling my grandchildren in.
It's so freaking gross. I can't. Like, I'll get on a boat in the water. Like a fishing boat, a kayak. Like, I will do that. But if my feet touch it...
I don't think I would go in Lake Lanier, though. I would go in... like up to like my ankles maybe, just to say that I had.
Just your ankles.
Because actually a lot of the drownings in Lake Lanier are near shore.
Yeah, shallow water.
Not necessarily shallow, because apparently since Lake Lanier, like the way it was made and how everything was left under there, it doesn't have like a shallow area and then a deep area like most lakes do.
Oh, like it doesn't gradually go down?
Yeah, I guess you can just be walking and then all of a sudden it just drops down like really like holes and things. Like that's what it sounds like to me. Like, but there are safe swimming areas, and in those safe swimming areas, people drowned all the time. So much so that they have a team. And even with the team is mainly for recovery. It takes them a really long time to recover.
And why do people keep going here?
You know what the crazy thing is I think a lot of people don't even know. I actually, I was single a while back and I did some online dating. And I talked to a man on the phone, and he had no idea that, you know, like we do this podcast or, you know, none of that. But he was just like talking about his family, and he told me that his mother had drowned at Lake Lanier. I knew about the lake at the time, and I mean, it's so interesting to me. And I was like, oh my God, you know, your mother drowned at Lake Lanier. And I'm trying to be sensitive because, I mean, of course, this person's whole life has been torn apart by Lake Lanier. And he had no idea that this lake is known for drownings and death and that there are things in the water. He had no idea about any of that. And they lived in Georgia.
Did you tell him?
I did, as sensitively as I could. I really, and we never did date. I mean,
not after that.
Well, no, I think I don't know. I mean, I think we honestly spent the entire time literally just talking about this, but there really wasn't just any other type of spark there or anything like that. I mean, he was a nice person, but I was shocked that he had no idea about this lake, and his mother had actually drowned in it, and she had drowned by shore.
That's crazy.
That their car was discovered right off the bridge, buried deep into the water. And when they pulled it up, they found Susie's body still in the water. And at that time I think they just went ahead and assumed to verify that the woman in blue was Dahlia, because she was missing from the vehicle and They had found Susie.
I wonder if she was missing from the vehicle. Was she trying to get out?
Maybe she was trying to get out. Maybe she was thrown out.
Yeah.
I mean, it would kill you trying to get out, right? If you rolled down your window, water would just rush in. Just what an awful scenario. What a tragic thing to happen. My heart goes out to them. Poor girls.
I imagine, unfortunately, this is just my own thought. If that many people visit the lake, that has to be a big moneymaker for that town. Oh, yeah. The tourists and
the water park, the resorts.
Not to mention, anything around there, local businesses and stuff would get the tourists. It's probably just makes too much money.
Shut down something that makes that much, or warn people about something that makes it. I mean, I do think there's swim at your own risk signs.
Right.
But I think there are at a lot of lakes. I mean, it doesn't tell you what you should know before you go in there. Swim at your own risk.
It doesn't tell you why.
Yeah. You need more information. Otherwise, it just seems like there's no lifeguard on duty.
Right.
And one thing that I wondered about when I was looking at this story, this is Georgia, I was wondering, is there alligators? I guess there are no natural alligators in that area. There have been a few that have been released and recaptured and whatnot, but it's just not a thing. Because, one thing that people report is hands pulling them under. Which is kind of strange, right? Because it's always attributed to the lady at the lake, but she doesn't have hands.
What if it's just her hands? Thing.
Maybe. I saw a TikTok video once that looked entirely real. I don't know for sure. And for this podcast, for our research, I tried to look back and see if I could get any information on this TikTok video, and there wasn't any. So obviously I can't say, was this real or was it not real? But I saw this TikTok and it was feet under the water, as if the body was out in the water and the feet were by shore, and they were white and they looked kind of bloated and they looked waterlogged and pale, and they did not look alive.
Were they connected to anything?
You couldn't tell because the body would have gone out into the water.
Because
I hope nobody heard my stomach.
I read recently or heard it, I'm not exactly sure where, but that if you are put into, it might have been something that I heard about Lacey Peterson, maybe, but if you're put into water and you have say restraints or something on your feet, maybe something weighing you down, then natural, your body's going up and the weights are weighing you down, that it will pull your feet off of your body.
Oh, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Well, because everything's going to get weaker in the water anyway.
Right.
Your skin is going to fall
and I
apart.
Can't remember if it was that story, but it kind of seems like maybe it was, but I don't really remember. But
well, and as far as I know, 27 of the people that have gone missing in Lake Lanier have never been recovered. Now, some people speculate that the reason that people drowned in the lake is because of the curse and the Lady of the Lake, and some people speculate that it has to do with all the things in the water. People getting caught on them.
Yeah.
And it does make sense, although, I can imagine hitting my leg on a tree stump, but why would a tree stump pull me under? But, if they just chopped off the tops of them, is there branches lower than that people are getting tangled in? I mean,
I mean, I would think so.
Because if they just didn't fill it to full pool, I mean, not every tree has branches that, stop in the same place and whatnot. I mean, they just lopped off the tops of them.
Mm-hmm.
Little irresponsible, I might say. If you go online, you can find videos of droughts, and sometimes the water level is so low you can see like the stands from the racetrack. Just different things poking through.
That is so scary. I don't know why. Just imagining something submerged in water, like where people used to congregate. Like that would have been a lot of people there, right? And now it's just like under the water. It's so creepy.
It is weird. It is definitely weird to think about. A few years ago, one of the droughts exposed what is believed to be a Cherokee sacred burial mound.
Oh, wow.
I believe they even found like artifacts in it,
Mm-hmm.
and they were able to like date it and stuff like that. The deadliest day at Lake Lanier is known as Christmas Day 1964. What was supposed to be a day full of happiness and family love turned tragic. 2 families spending Christmas together decided that they wanted some apples for their holiday meal. Both families got into their car. I've seen people say that both families got into 2 cars. I've seen that people say that, both families got into 1 car. There was like 11 people. I can't imagine both families getting into 1 car, except that this was 1959. I mean, I was born in 1981. I was definitely put on a phone book when I was little. I sat between the driver and the passenger in what would be considered a very janky middle seat. People sitting in the back of trucks was not uncommon. I mean, different times.
What year did you say it was?
1959. So regardless, they were either in 1 or 2 cars, and they were driving across the bridge and headed toward the apple orchard. It looks as though the driver lost control of the car, and into the water they went. 7 people perished. There were passersby. People dove in and tried to help. They said that there was near zero visibility, which this is something that is known about Lake Lanier. When you are in the water, it is like pitch black, they say. The car was in the lake 30 feet in 30 feet of water, which this leads me to believe that there was possibly 2 cars, because maybe there was 7 people in 1 car, because how did anyone get out? I mean, getting out of a car that has been submerged in water, I mean, that seems like a miracle, right?
Yeah, and you said there were 11, so 4 people survived.
Right, which is an amount that you would have in a car.
Maybe 1 car had 4 people. That was the 1 family, and then the 7 was the other family. On a cold autumn night around 1 a.m., 2 fishermen were on the lake. They spotted an apparition on a raft in an area of the water that's around 45 feet deep, but the rider was using a pole to navigate through the lake, but they were having no trouble pushing the pole through the water, which, if the lake was 45 feet deep, like, there's no way that pole could push the bottom, from the bottom of the lake to move the raft. The fishermen watched the figure, and all of a sudden the figure shouted and jumped from the raft into the cold water. The fishermen were afraid that the apparition was coming towards them, so they pulled up their lines and got ready to leave.
How crazy to be afraid that there's like a person. I've never in my life even considered that, like a person swimming under the water, like up to my craft.
Right.
To like do something to me. I've never even considered that.
And it's dark, right? Like, you can't see. But they did shine their lights across the water, but there was no sign of the raft or the figure. The surface of the lake was calm, like nothing had been there.
Creepy.
Some people believe it is a residual haunting, like a ghost from the past. When men once traveled the shallow rivers and creeks along the foothills.
Here's another sad story from Lake Lanier. 11-year-old Kyle Glover was on an inner tube in Lake Lanier when there was a boating accident. A jet ski driven by a family friend crashed into him, and unfortunately he perished. He was the ex-stepson, from my understanding, of singer Usher. So Usher's ex-wife, so it's his ex-stepson. The family friend did end up going to prison. She prosecuted. He had been drinking. And I think that is an important thing to note about Lake Lanier. A lot of the lakes I go to, you're not supposed to drink. Do people?
Absolutely.
But do people less? I think when there's a rule against it and people feel like they're breaking the rule, they tend to keep themselves under a little more control.
That makes sense.
There is no rule at Lake Lanier. I'm fairly certain drinking is allowed. Alcoholic beverages are allowed. And that's all well and good. I don't have any issue with drinking. But I do feel like the water can be dangerous. And if you're at a lake known for deaths and drowning, you might want to,
Well, I don't know the laws there, but I don't think you're supposed to operate watercraft.
Apparently there's been hundreds of boat collisions in the last 30 years on the lake. Now, even though he was in a boating accident, he was in a boating accident and he was not in a boat, he was in an inner tube. His mother, Tamika Foster, has a petition to drain Lake Lanier. She wants to drain, clean, and restore the lake and to have the hazardous material underneath the lake removed. So she must feel in some way that whatever is underneath the lake contributed to the accident. I would just assume that. Why else would she have this petition if she felt that it was simply just a boat versus inner tube?
Yeah, but that contradicts the lawsuit against that man.
Well, he still hit him.
He did, but that's putting all of the blame on him. If she thinks that, there was another factor.
Well, I think...
it could be both.
I don't agree, right? Because just because there's an external factor doesn't mean somebody isn't responsible. It doesn't mean that hitting him didn't kill him just because there was an external factor, right? But I do get what you're saying also. It's definitely interesting. Maybe, she just feels that because of all the deaths there.
Overall,
yeah. Who knows? On the morning of January 5th, 2015, Kelly Nash, a 25-year-old, went missing from his Buford, Georgia home. He left his house without his wallet, ID, car keys, but a 9mm handgun was missing. Nash had woke up that morning coughing and sneezing. He told his girlfriend he wasn't feeling well. By the time she got up at 7:30 a.m., her boyfriend was gone. He had left the house but left all of his belongings. An extensive search was launched. Missing persons posters were everywhere, and his family intently looked for him. It took 5 weeks to find him floating in a cove of Lake Lanier. He had a single gunshot wound, and I can't find anywhere if they believe it was self-inflicted. I really don't know. I think that's probably the thought process. There was a gun missing from his home. It had a single clip in it. And just another unfortunate circumstance at Lake Lanier.
When they found his body, you said 5 weeks later, did they think he'd been dead the whole 5 weeks?
He was badly decomposed.
Okay.
Sad. In November of 2019, a man named Jason Millen was bass fishing on Lake Lanier when he saw something shiny under the surface. What would you think it was?
Okay, just when you're saying something shiny, I don't know how deep it is. Was it floating under the surface, or he could see it at the bottom?
It was in around 15 feet of water.
At the bottom of the water?
It was the water was 15 feet, and something was shining.
You know what I'm trying to say, though, right? Was it floating shining?
I don't know if it was floating.
All right, so my first thought would maybe be jewelry.
It was definitely under the water.
Jewelry, fishing lure.
It was a van.
It's not what I expected.
With a body inside.
Oh, that probably wasn't floating.
Isn't it weird, though, that...
Nobody saw it before?
Well, and it had been in there since June. Well, at least the person had gone missing in June. It was the body of Van Dobbs, a 56-year-old who was last seen driving from his home on the Old Keith Bridge in a silver 2002 Dodge Caravan, and was found in November in 15 feet of water in Lake Lanier.
Was this the person that saw it? I'm assuming that they were in a place where other people probably had swam before, right?
I don't know if it was a swimming area,
Right.
but I mean, you gotta think there's probably fishermen all over. I mean, I just think it's strange that it had been in there and nobody had seen it. I mean, it's a whole van. 15 feet of water just isn't that much.
It's not. I mean, who knows? Maybe the sun was just
hitting it the right way that day.
The right time, the right way.
Gavri, I'm sorry, I don't have any idea how to say it. I am trying here. Gavri Alexander Whitlock was running down a dock on Lake Lanier, and he slipped and he fell in. Mm-hmm. And that was it. He just never came back up. And this is something that we hear a lot from people who have almost drowned, or like the family and friends of people that did drown. People just go in and they just don't come back up. There doesn't seem to be a struggle, like nothing that you would assume happens when somebody is drowning. Literally, somebody just jumps in and then you never see them again. They're just gone.
That is so scary.
It is. It's terrifying. This was in 17 feet of water, which, I mean, is a lot. 12 foot. I am not a strong swimmer. I can barely swim, even though I love to be in the water and love to go on boats. I make sure I'm careful and I, take equipment with me that I need. I could easily die in 12 feet of water, but I feel like most people wouldn't. Most people could get a little bit of ways, to save themselves. And 17 feet, it is a lot, but it's not so much that you just couldn't come back up. All I think is maybe he hit his head when he slipped and fell, right?
Right, but I feel like 17 feet of water isn't so deep that other people couldn't rescue you.
Yeah, it's just so many instances that it makes it strange,
Yeah.
Thomas Shepard Milner jumped off of a dock into Lake Lanier and was electrocuted. This was something, I had heard of this on the news long ago, and I had never considered jumping into a lake and getting electrocuted. Have you ever considered that? I mean, people have dock lights and things. I mean, there's electricity under the ground. I never thought of it happening.
No.
And I still think it's really strange.
Do they know how he got electrocuted?
I'm not sure if they specifically know. They probably do. I don't see it here in the articles that I'm taking this from. But apparently there is literally no way to know if the water around the dock is electrified, and this is not an isolated incident. This may be the only time it's happened at Lake Lanier. I'm not sure, but there are other instances of it. And there's just no way to tell. You can just jump in and it will be electrified. And he did live long enough to scream for help, and people did get boats and they tried to go in and get him. But when they touched the water, it burnt them and they realized what was happening. They did turn off the electricity. But, of course, by then it was too late.
I never heard of that. I mean,
It's terrifying.
I'm not around lakes and docks and boats. So, so I guess maybe I'm ignorant to it, but I've just never heard of it.
I am, and I've never heard of it. I mean, I guess I'm not around, bigger boats very often. I'm mostly around kayaks, but how terrifying. I wonder how far the electricity travels. I guess it depends on how much is open, how much there is to travel.
Right.
I don't know. On Memorial Weekend of 2022, 7 people passed away at Lake Lanier.
Were they all together?
They were not. It was just a combination of different boating accidents. One boater was charged with boating under the influence, but it is known as the deadliest Memorial Weekend on Lake Lanier. There's just so many strange occurrences. There's so many strange stories, and there's stranger and stranger stories. I mean, if you look, you can mount them. There's so many that we didn't even mention here. I mean, we could probably go on for 3 hours just talking about weird stories, maybe longer. And the stories where people survived and have almost drowned, and they say the water is thick or something was pulling them under. I mean, there's just so many stories of Lake Lanier.
So do you think that Lake Lanier is really cursed?
Tough question. My brain doesn't work like that. I feel like I would need more information. I would have to look at a variety of lakes and look at their size and the amount of people that attend and, what happens. Because I'm sure strange things happen everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But I would have to calculate my mind works in numbers, I guess. I think it's possible. I mean, I believe in the paranormal. I believe we've seen evidence of the paranormal. I don't know why the lady of the lake would be so angry that she would be pulling people under.
Maybe she's not pulling people under. Maybe she's trying to get their attention.
Maybe. I mean, who knows? Stranger things have happened.
But I think overall, if you combine alcohol, lots of people, factors for bad things to happen. So you can blame it on a curse, or is it just people, a lot of people, so a lot of things happen because there's a lot of people.
Diver Doug Buchanan has told media outlets that sometimes he will reach out and there's just an arm or a leg just unmoving because there's bodies in the water.
So he sees it or he feels it?
Well, it's supposed to be like pitch black under there.
Right. But if he's diving, wouldn't he have a light?
Right, but I think that, like, if you watched videos of diving...
I haven't.
Yeah, it's not the greatest.
Okay.
But, I mean, you can see, but, I mean, I think that the general consensus is that not only have 27 people not been recovered and their bodies are under the water, but some of the graves have opened up.
Oh, okay.
And there are bodies in the water.
Oh, my God.
Like, I think that it's not, like, a question of, like, is there? I think, like, it's people know that there is.
Isn't that crazy? Like, people are still swimming in that. Like, I know what you said about the dead body to water ratio. It just seems so high. When you think about the graves, too.
Right. Well, but I mean, you don't know how many opened up or how many were left. You know what I mean? There's a man who dives under Lake Lanier, like professionally, like you can hire him. And he actually will dive in Lake Lanier. Like if you lose your cell phone or you lose a ring, he's pulled like over 30 rings out of the bottom of Lake Lanier. Like he dives down and finds rings, which I think is just amazing and crazy.
It is. Like, I would tell people, get out, get lost.
And he said that he knows where the last fully intact house under Lake Lanier is. Like he said, the rest of them, there's just foundations and there's just rubble. I've actually watched some videos of them diving under Lake Lanier, and it's mostly just, I mean, there's like cinder blocks and it's just like rubble. Like I didn't really see anything super cool, but like I said, it's also super hard to see anything.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they're so brave. I would not be brave enough to go down there and dive like that. It's crazy to me.
You know, now that I'm thinking about it more, I guess it does make sense that he can't see, because if the water is so dark under there, that would be like taking a flashlight and putting it in black liquid. Like the light's not going to go that far.
Right.
If at all. That makes sense. I would not be brave enough to go down there.
No, me either.
Even if it wasn't haunted, just like the thought of being like in that darkness.
I could never.
I don't like it.
They're brave. I could never.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be brave enough to go into Lake Lanier?
Just a toe.
Yeah, just a toe. I'm just going to put my feet in. And the whole time I'll be thinking about that TikTok where
it's literally just the feet
dead.
in. Yeah.
The dead looking feet were there. Well, that's all we have for you today, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.